Welcome to the eCommerce Growth Show, brought to you by Segmentify, the fast, lean learning machine, the fastest learning, most revenue-generating personalization platform for eCommerce.
Welcome to the eCommerce Growth Show. And in this episode, I got a really interesting guy we've got a chat with called John Readman. Now, I remember the first time I spoke to John, I think he was at Summit Media, and I think I was at Trustpilot. But I was just browsing his LinkedIn profile, and I was amazed actually at the great stuff he's been doing. And amongst those things, he's actually the founder of a marketing technology and in-housing company called Modo25, which was started a year ago with his friend Bonamy Grimes. I hope that's the right way of saying that name. And who was actually one of the original founders of Skyscanner. So this is really exciting. Hi, John. How's it going?
Yeah, good, Phil. Yeah, great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. I just thought I'd start by asking you about your history, really. Your LinkedIn profile sounds amazing with all these things you've been doing, Digital Brains and Supper Club, Ride25, and obviously Modo25. Give us a bit of background.
So I suppose the headlines are I've always been in sales and marketing, and I've spent the last few years growing several digital technology and digital marketing businesses. But the businesses that I spend most of my time on now, as well as Modo25, is we have a cycling, holiday and charity business called Ride25, which takes groups of entrepreneurs and business owners cycling and all the way from London to Sydney to raise money for an orphanage in Africa. As well as that, we organise corporate cycling events, cycling holidays, and I've got a friend of mine who runs that business now, but myself and another friend own it. The Digital Brains business is a consultancy that my wife and I both own, and it's mainly my wife's business. And we've had some dabbles at actually running our own e-commerce brands in the past. So I'm not just an agency and technology guy who hasn't actually done it myself. So we've had a go, and she does some stuff now. And then the Supper Club is an entrepreneurs forum and a club for that helps companies that are sort of past that startup phase that are going for scale up. And I represent the North. And I'm a very passionate Yorkshireman, and I've been a member of the Supper Club for 7 years. And I remember a conversation with the then MD of the Supper Club saying, "When are we going to do something in Yorkshire?" Because I spend a lot of time up and down going to London, and I'm fortunate that the train connection between York and London is very quick. And I said, "When are we going to do something in Yorkshire?" And this the lady at the time, and she can remain nameless, was running the Supper Club, said, "Yeah, we've got stuff in Yorkshire. We're coming up to Yorkshire next week, I think. We're going to Manchester." And I think that just highlights the problem. So anyway, roll forward a couple of years, the Supper Club turned around and goes, "Well, look here, Redman, if you're going to keep moaning about it, why don't you help us do something about it?" So probably 18 months ago, would it be about that? Something like that. Maybe probably about 18 months ago, I set up Supper Club Yorkshire, which is still part of the Supper Club, but basically it's Yorkshire entrepreneurs. We meet up. It's almost like a virtual board type thing, where it's therapy for entrepreneurs, where you chat about business problems, and it's a support network. And then the main group has loads of different events, and it's actually been amazingly good during these strange times recently, in terms of support, ideas, checking if you're the only one who's thinking the same thing. So, because often when you're running your own business, it can be quite lonely.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
So, and then my most recent venture, Modo25, I set up with a cycling friend of mine who I actually met several years ago on one of our Ride25 events, Bonamy, who was one of the founders of Skyscanner. And the main thing we're trying to do there is disrupt the traditional brand retailer agency relationship and help people take control of their own digital future and understand what online marketing could mean for them, help them learn about their data, help them learn about their metrics, and take control of their own future performance. So yeah, that's what Modo25 is doing.
That sounds really interesting, all that stuff. So talking about the kind of overarching theme for the chat today, we're really talking obviously about the fact we're in the middle of a pandemic and the fact that that's accelerated digital as a channel. Maybe start by giving us a bit of intel on how your clients have found the last few months.
So I suppose it's a bit of probably a story of two halves, really. We've had some clients we've had a client who's actually gone into administration and hit the wall. They were a high-end fashion going out outfit type business, and nobody's been buying going out dresses for £250 in the last few months, and they were already, I think, struggling. And this just tipped them over the edge. So that was a real shame for that particular business. And again, with our travel connection through Bon and Skyscanner, when we launched the business this time last year, we went after a few travel businesses, and obviously nobody's booking travel or spending money on travel at the moment. So we did suffer a bit at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
That said, we've got the complete opposite end of the scale. So we work with a cycling brand called Sigma Sports, who sell bikes online, and they can't sell enough bikes quick enough. They've had 3 record months in a row, and they literally. And what's exciting now is we just hope people carry on cycling. But it's not just cycling; it's health supplements and vitamins. We've got a really interesting client who does prescription online glasses, so-called low-cost glasses, and they've seen double-digit growth month on month all the way through the pandemic, because people still need to buy glasses. They may have broken their glasses, lost their glasses, and the opticians aren't open. So what's interesting, I suppose, now is, will this change people's behaviour ongoing, or will they go back to their old habits? And I suppose the other bit, Phil, which I was always a bit worried about, is we wanted to support our existing clients, and it's like, when do you go out and start trying to grow your own business during this time? So we've sort of taken a view of being helpful and educational, but we have successfully signed up new clients end to end, all online using Zoom and Teams, having never actually met them. So I think the way we do business and the way we do new business and the way we pitch and everything may have changed forever. So that is really interesting, and I think it's gonna, for a lot of retailers, it's the only shop they've had open is their website.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, so in terms of like the company Modo25, you mentioned it being, we were talking earlier about it being quite disruptive in many ways. Could you give kind of me and our listeners a bit of an overview as to what you're doing differently, if you like, in that space?
I probably didn't. I'm very poor at banging my own drum sometimes. So the Modo, so the concept is, I've been involved in agency land and marketing technology for over 20 years, and there's always been this relationship where the agency send in their A team, they sign up the client, they promise you the moon on the stick, and over time the relationship degrades and you don't necessarily get the service. It becomes very transactional. There's less and less new ideas, and I've always thought that was a bit of a shame. But also, if you're a retailer now or a brand, not just the fact that you're getting a poor service and it's become transactional, there's also a huge issue around who owns the data, who owns that IP, who owns the control and the strategy of your online future. The internet, I think we could probably agree now, Phil, it isn't a fad, and most retailers need to really start taking this channel quite seriously. So should they have that knowledge in house? So what Modo25 is doing is two things. First of all, we're going to give people a roadmap of how to in-house their digital marketing expertise. And that could be through strategy, best practice, implementation, recruitment, training. But then also, one of the biggest challenges in the past, if you do bring these things in house, how do you know if you're doing a good job? How do you benchmark yourself against your peers? How do you keep up to date with what all the other agencies are doing, and all the other clients are doing? So we're building some technology called BOSCO, which is a benchmarking and auditing tool, and then also it's going to give people some insight in how to invest their budget in the right channels. So I think also the big challenge that everybody's facing online now is Google's becoming the sort of default option, and nobody gets fired for buying Google clicks. So there's two sides to it. Modo25 is a technology and in-housing business, and we have some technology called BOSCO, which is going to help people on their in-housing journey and help give them a dashboard and some benchmarking for the future. So that's what we're doing. And I think in the past, people had two options. They had either you do it with an agency or you try and do it on your own in-house. What we're sort of offering now is a third option, which I suppose is like a hybrid, supported in-housing maybe is the right word, where you've got access to an agency. So if somebody goes on holiday or if they're off sick, because we've helped you set it up to best practice, we can dive in from behind and pick it up and give you that support. And because our technology is interweaved with your reporting, we can see from afar if your team's doing a good job and hold them to account.
That's really interesting. So does that then mean that it's almost like a win-win in the sense that the in-house team has more control, perhaps at a less of a cost point?
I think if you're doing it just to save costs, then I think that's probably the wrong motivation. If you're doing it to take more control and overall have better efficiencies and future scalability and increase the overall knowledge and value of your business, then maybe that's the right motivation. I think realistically, however, you will save money over the first couple of years because having the knowledge in house, these people can do other things, and they can also respond a lot more reactively and a lot quicker to react to needs, and they will understand your brand better than any agency ever could. So that is one of the main things.
And so the BOSCO platform, is it? Would you say?
It's a platform.
So I mean, how has that been? Has that been built with your man, the Skyscanner guy?
No, unfortunately, he's hung up his development boots and would class himself as a lazy investor, I suppose. But no, absolutely the reason we got Bon involved is because he was the guy who invented Skyscanner, one of those guys, and he wanted to be involved in some disruptive technology. So BOSCO basically, and BOSCO is actually the name of the gentleman who runs a Ugandan orphanage that we support with Ride25. And when we set this business up, Bon and I are very passionate about supporting this orphanage in Jinja, Uganda. And we were trying to come up with a name for the business, and we're like, well, Ride25, with 25 links as both of them. Actually, Modo is the name of one of the 9-year-old girls at the orphanage in Uganda. And we have a slightly higher purpose than just making money for the shareholders. We give away a significant part of our profit each year. We do a load of charitable events each year to raise money. In fact, we were meant to be doing a Three Peaks last weekend with the whole Modo25 team, but that got kiboshed because of the virus. But we did it virtually anyway, and we raised several £1,000s. So that's great. But so the BOSCO thing, going back to the BOSCO thing, is it sucks in all the publicly available data that's out there, and then what it does is it runs some AI over the top of that to benchmark you against your competitors and give you a score and an index. So you've then got something that has context to it. And then it tells you, right, because what a lot of digital marketing tools and agencies will tell you, they'll tell you what happened last year, yesterday. But what people actually want to know is what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next week, and where should I be putting my roulette chips? Right? Where should I be investing my next pound to get maximum return? So I challenged some very smart data scientists with that question, and we've built this tool The first version of it is available now at askbosco.io, and that compares Google, Amazon, and Bing for your category. But very soon, and we're talking sort of July, August time, we'll be launching the second version, which will enable you just to put in your URL, and then it will give you a score and an index of where you are, and then it will also so it'll benchmark you against your competitors, and then it will give you some views on where you should be investing your media, all just from your URL, which we think will enable, which will disrupt and challenge the relationship between agencies, teams, senior people, and generally cause a bit of chaos. Well, I'm hoping it does.
It sounds like it. I mean, so is it kind of like a classic SaaS platform then? In that way, do you sell it like as a subscription type?
Well, I suppose because we're relatively well funded and we're not just building this business to sell it. Because the other part of what I want to do is I actually want to set up a delivery center in Uganda, and because we're educating all these kids at the orphanage, but actually they can't get jobs. So why can't we give them a job working for Modo25 in Ginger? That's in a few years. But so fundamentally, we are a SaaS marketing benchmarking and prediction tool, and elements of it will be free. Elements of it will be free for a period of time, and then if you like it, you could subscribe. If you then want to actually benchmark your actual data rather than our scraped and normalized and learned data, you could pay to subscribe and link it to your data. And then ongoing, we're going to have some dashboarding and some tools because I think one of the biggest things is things like Google Analytics or Facebook Analytics are pretty daunting, and often none of them make sense because the numbers don't add up because there isn't a normalized view across all channels.
That's right.
So what we're trying to do is, I suppose, if you went to Google and said, "How do I make more money out of the internet?" they will say, "Spend more money with Google." If you went to Facebook, they'll say spend more money with Facebook and Amazon, etc., etc. So what we're trying to do, and not what we're doing actually, is giving people a single agnostic view of where are you best placed to invest your money to get maximum return from the internet. And as more channels come along, so as TikTok comes along and as other channels come along, it's just going to get harder and more complicated for marketers to make decisions. So that's what we're trying to do, is help people make better informed decisions.
Okay. So my final question on the BOSCO bit then is the model such that the in-house team very easily, like I said earlier, sort of takes control of all this benchmarking data out of the box, job done? Or is it more of a case of working with you to get the best out of that sort of self-service platform for the strategies going forward? Because one of the things we were talking about was the complexity, is you've kind of touched on, around how much does the leadership of enterprise or retailers across the UK really know about what it is they've got to try and measure and work out and drive forward?
Very good question. And I think that you can't just say, right, I'm going to bring everything in house and I'm going to use this tool to help me, tell me, navigate me and point me in the right direction. So part of it is very much at the beginning, the Modo25 agency services side, where we have several agency practitioners who've worked with me for many years, who go into businesses or work with the businesses to set up the best practice, set all the systems up in a traditional agency way. So we may do that for 3 or 6 months. Then we will help them recruit the team or analyze the internal capabilities of the team, and then we roll in the software. So it's people, data, and technology. It's not just one. So you're absolutely right. It is about a transition. But there is also potentially an opportunity for us to white label the BOSCO platform for other agencies who want to give some benchmarking to demonstrate that they're doing a really good job for their clients.
Absolutely. And it might be, you say there's a multiple model opportunity there. I mean, if an agency wants to value add and the brand doesn't want to do it, right? But they want to use their agency, but they want that extra level of transparency, if you like, through the BOSCO platform, and not just relying on Google which I know we'll come on to a little bit later. It sounds like there's lots of different opportunities there for that platform. Is it the only one then? I mean, is this unique? Is this like a disruptor to the market, like right now?
I asked our principal data scientist that only this morning, and he believes it is. Because
Wow,
I'm like, right,
exciting!
he's a double PhD, Dr. James, and
Wow,
when he's
fair play.
not solving these problems for us, he's
Yeah,
trying to cure malaria or work out why the barrier reef's not growing back as fast as we thought it would.
yeah,
So he's a super smart guy, and what I
yeah,
think we're just looking at some things in a very different way. So we're trying to take
yeah.
lots and lots of different data and
Sure.
distill that down um, to infer right what's going to happen next, but also how can we surface some comparable numbers to
Yeah,
give it meaning and context to senior people? Because I think one of the challenges what digital's done is it's given everybody tons and tons of data. We're awash with seas of data, but it's actually trying to find those meaningful numbers that are going to
yeah,
help you drive your business. And I think
yeah.
that's the bit that
Absolutely.
people struggle with.
Oh yeah, that's got to be so difficult for any role. I think where you've got so much going on, any team to be able to get that clarity is the gold, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, and I think people that there is too much data and they don't necessarily know which data is the
Yeah,
use is the
no,
useful one.
boiling it down is critical. You're right. Let me just quickly ask you about the Ugandan connection thing. I mean, just taking it slightly left field from the business side, what is actually the driver behind the whole?
Yeah, so fundamentally, it was a friend of ours, Harry. He was running himself a charity in
Yeah,
Uganda. He was actually working with a different charity in Uganda and saw that there was a problem with kids on the street and there was a slums and
mm,
there's a very poor, I suppose, sex awareness and
yeah,
birth control over there.
yeah,
And so that you've got lots of kids who don't have families or whose family can't support them.
mm,
So they don't get an education. A lot of them haven't got anywhere to live, and they'll sit on the street begging
yeah,
to try and or pick through rubbish to try and generate an income. And
yeah,
he was trying to work out, well, um, how can
yeah,
we help these kids? And he started by playing football with them, and then
yeah,
through sport, and then he sort of said, "Well, if you come play football," he thought, "Well, why don't I feed them whilst they come to play football?" And he started chatting to the kids, and at the start it was mainly boys, unfortunately, because they were the only ones interested in football. It's
yeah,
now we've got girls, and it's a very inclusive program. But he then
yeah,
started saying to the kids that were coming to play football, "Is if you could afford to go to school, would you go to school?"
yeah,
And they're very grateful of the kids in Uganda, completely different to, I suppose, a lot of the overprivileged kids in the UK. And
yeah,
a small amount of money can go a long, long way. So for as little as £300, we can clothe and educate a child for several months in Uganda and feed them and house them.
yeah,
So it basically came to a friend of mine, Harry and Rob. They were working with this charity, and we thought, well, it's nice to be able to have a direct impact and see
yeah,
something that you feel you can actually change and hopefully see an actual outcome. And then randomly, through all of this and us doing the cycling
yeah,
round with my cycling business, we've
mm,
inspired them to get into cycling, right?
yeah.
And so these kids have now got their own cycling team at the orphanage called the Ugandan
Awesome.
Warriors. And
Yeah,
one of the girls at the orphanage is
yeah.
now in the top 5 cyclists in Uganda
Really?
and wins money
Wow,
in races. And she
that's
gets
amazing.
to keep 50% of the money, but 50% of the money goes then into the pot for the orphanage.
Mm,
And she was going to be in the Ugandan Olympic team if they could afford to go to the next Olympics.
wow,
So
that's
it's a
amazing.
really interesting story, but
Yeah,
then we found ourselves getting wrangled in different politics and corruption of, well, if
yeah,
she's going to go to this event in this country, she needs 7 people
mm,
to go with her. We're like, well, no, she
yeah,
doesn't. But that's just the history and the challenges in those sorts of evolving countries. But no, the main reason for Uganda is through a friend and the impact that a small amount of money can have on lots of people's lives.
yeah. No, absolutely, no, completely. And I've been over and seen that firsthand as well. It's incredible I recommend it to anyone actually, just as part of that. One of those bucket list things to do is to just go and see how the third world really is.
I was gobsmacked the first time I went, and there's two things we're going to do this coming 12 months. Is one, I'm going to take the leadership team of Modo25 over there to see what impact we're actually doing, and we'll run some lessons and we'll work out and actually add some value. So I don't think it's like poverty tourism. I think it's about, well, what impact could you do? What small things could you do to help people? And then the other piece is I actually want to go over with my kids, because I think it's one thing seeing stuff on the telly, but when you're walking around a slum and you're talking to the kids and they're so grateful for everything they have in the world, it's definitely made me think differently about everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is one of those experiences that you carry with you for your life. And now and again, I think when I have chats like this, or you might be, I don't know, talking to your kids, or their kids might be talking to their children, if you know what I mean, when they've grown up, and there'll be that moment when you remember actually just how difficult life can be compared to what we call in inverted commas our first world problems that we rave on about over here, even during something like COVID, right?
The biggest challenge we've had in COVID is we couldn't find a big enough paddling pool. Right? And that's just like, what a first world challenge. So it does put everything into perspective.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, thanks for that.
But one interesting anecdote about this is there's the whole postal service and public transport service in Uganda has been shut down because of they've got the same problems as us, and they're doing lockdown. And they were trying to apply for grants to get money from the Ugandan government to support some stuff and some stuff for the orphanage and different things to do, because the schools are all shut as well. And part of the thing is we paid for the school fees, and in there they get some food at school, you see, as well. So anyway, the only way to get this letter from Ginger to Kampala was for Mary, the cyclist, to actually ride there and take the letter. So that's what she did. And I don't know if you've ever done that journey. It's quite a long way.
It is. So, not great roads either. Terrible roads, man.
Yeah, and the roads aren't great. Yeah, so
it's super dangerous actually as well.
Yeah. No, it is. And I think the other thing, which bringing it back to sort of e-commerce and commercial point, we definitely have attracted, and certainly people like Dr. James, who's our data scientist. One of the reasons he wanted to get involved with our business was the fact that we actually have a purpose, and the reason we exist is more than just making money for John Readman and the other shareholders. Is the fact we're doing some good in the world. And I think that you often hear entrepreneurs and business owners moaning about generation X and Y and Z and the millennials and everybody, and aren't they ungrateful and this, that, and the other? And actually, I think, well, surely our job as business owners is to create a business that they actually want to work for, rather than trying to get them to work in a business that they don't want to work for. So I think it's about empowerment, trust, but also a larger sense of purpose.
Yeah, that's a whole massive topic there, I think.
That's a whole different fruit. That's a whole different.
Brilliant stuff, and I'd love to get you on again and talk about that kind of thing, because there's a whole worldview piece, and I'm just challenging myself right now in my own head, thinking about what am I doing, and I'm very much on the business side, and I'm trying to build a great team, but why am I really building that great team, and am I really, thinking about my own family, my kids, and the roof over my head, and what else I can buy and what else I can do, and have I actually pulled out of that worldview and thought slightly bigger than that? A bit like what you're talking about, Dr. James, and yourself, and the Ugandan thing and all that. That's a whole big topic, I think, to delve into. I'd love to do that with you another time for sure.
Yeah, maybe face to face over a beer. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
That'd be cool. Yeah. Maybe we can get some of the listeners in as well, right? We could do a big.
We could do instead of a podcast, we'll do a pubcast.
That sounds great. Yeah. And we do. Segmentify does a curry night thing as well, where we go around the country doing a curry roadshow. So we'll have to see who's listening, right? Come up your way, grab a bunch of listeners.
We've got some phenomenal curry places in Leeds, absolute belters.
You'd have to show us around, man, because myself, to come out. He's a bit of he's a well-connected guy in the old curry world. So we go to a really nice place and have some fun, Yeah. Well, why don't we just finish off with a little bit about, I did mention earlier we were going to talk about Google and possibly even Amazon as well. These are very interesting topics for certainly me, and I've had a couple of chats with other people about them on other sessions. But certainly in terms of Google, you were telling me earlier, I didn't know this actually, that they've been in the news again recently with the whole kind of anti-competitive side of it. And you were talking about the alcoholic selling the drink or whatever. What are your thoughts on that side?
So I suppose the other way to look at it is Google's basically marking its own homework and giving itself a pat on the back all the time. So there's lots of new features that Google are launching under the guise of helping the advertiser be more efficient and potentially even disintermediating the agency or their own in-house team. But my view, and the view of our data scientists, is if everybody has these automated bidding tools, and everybody's relying, you put in some metrics, say, I'm happy to spend this. Funnily enough, Google will take as much money off you as it can, because they're a for-profit business. And then if everybody's got that set to the same thing, all right, you're all going to spend your maximum budgets within the tolerances of what you've allowed, so your profit gets eroded and Google's profit is maximized. But surely a better game would be to get some clever people to help you maximize your business profits and reduce your exposure to Google and make it as efficient as possible. So I do get frustrated with Google being such a dominant player as an advertiser, and now it's giving away free technology to maximize how much money you spend with it. And I think it is going to take individual countries' government intervention. It's happened before. So the EU has held Google to account before, and they had to launch the whole Google CSS program, let other people into the market in Google Shopping. So, but they do a good job, and they do a good job that serves the consumer very well. However, I think if you're a retailer now, you are unfortunately your main route to market is through Google, and they virtually dictate the price. I know they say it's an auction and it's a cost per click, but because of a lot of this new AI technology, the cost per clicks are going up and up and up. And that's one of the big challenges that I think retail is facing. People think it's a bloodbath on the high street. It's difficult to compete online, especially I was the fashion retailer that went into administration we were talking about before. They could not afford to bid on generic terms because it was too expensive and too competitive. And also, so anyway, I think Google's trying to have its cake and eat it, which is often the case. And I think it's also very frustrating to see. Years ago, as agency people, we used to get wined and dined by Google, and it was all about the agencies pushing Google to the retailers and the brands. And now Google's very much focused on going direct to the brands. And fundamentally, that strategy is so that the senior folk don't question the Google invoices or don't drill into too much detail, and they often push metrics like ROAS, which is like return on ad spend. Whereas actually, I think, shouldn't we be focused on margin or cost per sale or cost of sale rather than ROAS? Because ROAS, I think, drives the wrong behavior in depending on what you're trying to do as a business.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, these massive beasts. I know there's more than just Google and Amazon, right? But clearly, they are very clever business people.
Oh no, and the consumers feed the monster. So it's like Amazon. Something I can't remember exactly what the stat was, but something like 50% of e-commerce transactions in America occur on Amazon. So Amazon is half the internet in America in terms of e-commerce transactions. So, and then there's other stats like product searches now are taking place. People don't start on Google; they start on Amazon. Right, so if you're going to actually buy something and you know it's a relatively commoditized product, do you even do a Google search now and click on a Google shopping ad, or do you actually just start an Amazon because you know it will arrive tomorrow and you don't need to put any details in? Right, so it's actually about that whole frictionless commerce, making it easy for people to buy stuff. And I think it's very easy for people to beat up Amazon and say how they're killing the high street. But I'm pretty certain most listeners to the podcast today will have bought something from Amazon during lockdown, if not more things, because it's a reliable supply chain. But I think, I think Google. It's going to be interesting to see, because Amazon. The other bit that's interesting now is Amazon is starting to sell advertising space, and actually you can now advertise on Amazon, even if you don't sell on Amazon. So Amazon's becoming an advertising platform, a display platform in its own right to compete with the likes of the Google Display Network and YouTube. So they're coming and saying, well, actually, we're just going to value that eyeball. Rather than trying to get you to sell something, that eyeball has a value. We know exactly who you are. We know exactly what you shop for. We know exactly what you do. So we can really sell some very targeted marketing to you. And that's got a huge value. And then going the other way, Google have been testing selling you the product in the search engine results page within shopping. So you rather than click to buy and go to a thing, there you'll be able to just buy it straight. So Google's becoming a marketplace, Amazon's becoming an advertiser, and it's going to be fascinating. And actually, in all of this, if you understand your metrics and your numbers as a retailer or brand, you should be able to benefit. But I do think some brands have got the wrong end of the stick with Amazon and are missing an opportunity and are too nervous and should embrace the opportunity that Amazon gives them and take control of their brand, because people will be selling their brands on Amazon anyway, and Amazon won't care where they get the product from. They will still ship it because that's what the consumer wants, and they put their customers first, which I think they've got to do. But I suppose with all of this, is it killing creativity and branding? And is it just are the masks?
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, that's what I was going to ask you, because if you've got brands out there, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, is Amazon something to be feared, and you have to try with all your might to still maintain a strong brand in the face of Amazon? Or can you preserve your brand and embrace Amazon? What is the bottom line here in terms of, obviously, e-commerce brands and for them to try and grow?
So I think if you think about Amazon Amazon's a retailer, okay, and if you think about nobody had a go at Tesco's. Well, maybe they did. When the example I often use is kettle chips, right? When kettle chips suddenly appeared several years ago in those massive bags, and now suddenly a normal packet of crisps just doesn't seem big enough, does it? But maybe that's just me. Certainly in lockdown, it doesn't feel big enough. But suddenly these big bags of kettle chips from the kettle chip people started appearing. And then about a year later, Tesco started doing their own kettle chips, right? That's just called retail, right? And people and people are like, oh, well, actually, the Tesco's ones are 50p cheaper and they taste almost the same. Right, we'll get those ones. So everybody then sort of is moaning at Amazon, going, well, I don't want to put my stuff on Amazon because they'll just invent an Amazon basic version, and then they'll start selling it, or they'll undercut me, or they'll learn and get on my data. But I suppose what you've got to do in here, and the bit that kettle chips haven't gone out of business, right? People still buy kettle chips, the brand, right? Because it has a brand, it has a value and a perceived quality. And I think what brands need to understand is, if they get their brand marketing right, it just opens up a whole new avenue of customers that they could sell to. And I'll give you some examples of people who are doing it well. There's a nutrition and energy company called Grenade. I don't know if you know Grenade. They're doing exceptionally well. Phenomenal business, visionary founder, all about the people, all about the customers. But they've gone on to Amazon to take control of their product that other retailers were selling and created some really engaging brand content, right? So, and there is functions within the Amazon process where you can almost have a branded look and feel website, but people just aren't on top of it. And another company that's done a great job is Lego, for instance. They've done another sort of exceptional job. But I think sooner or later, Amazon will be selling your product if you're a brand, whether you like it or not. And I suppose it's about how do you engage with Amazon to ensure that your customers get the right brand experience, and it's not just about price and product.
I suppose, is it right to say though that it genuinely depends on, if we're talking to brands right now who are listening, that's one side of the coin. I can only assume, maybe I'm wrong, that if you're not a brand and you're almost, well, you are a brand, but you're selling a more commoditized type model where you haven't got something which is unique and special in some way or whatever, and you're almost distributing something that's the same as Amazon. Is that basically not our audience? These people just don't exist anymore.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting. So the old way, it's going to be harder. So the more brands go direct to consumer, which they are. So who'd have ever thought you could buy Heinz beans from Heinz direct? Which you can now, by the way. They launched in lockdown now. You can go on, buy all your favourite Heinz products, and they'll ship it straight to your house. That would have been unheard of 10 years ago, because the supermarkets and the big multiples were their customers. And who'd have thought that you'd go onto a brewery website, buy your beer direct, and get it sent to your house? Right? So BrewDog, that's how I buy my beer. So it's about embracing and understanding what do the end consumers want. I think it is becoming hard and a challenge. But then can you flip it on the head the other way and go, well, actually, if I am a distributor, if I have a product that I'm selling, is it actually now becoming this whole headless commerce thing? So it becomes feed-driven commerce. So I might have 10 products or 20 products that are competitively priced, and actually my job is really to get coverage across as many different marketplaces as possible. So I could go on to Mano in France, or I could go into Frugo in the UK. I can get it on as many outlets as possible. But actually, I then don't have the cost of running my own website, doing my own marketing. My job is to make sure I've got my merchandising, my proposition right, and my pricing right, and my brand right, so that people see it on these other platforms and buy it. But it's hard. And as the margins are getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and then as the distribution gets, because I know lots of companies who've tried to sell things on Amazon, and once you've paid Amazon to advertise it on Amazon, and then you paid the fulfilled by Amazon cost or whatever, there's no margin. There's no margin left.
That's what I was thinking, especially in that particularly commoditized type of market, where your brand could be great, but all of a sudden, how on earth are you going to compete? But I mean, in terms of not finishing off is the wrong word really, but because we could talk for ages, but I'd love to sort of get you on and maybe just dissect some of these other things we've been talking about. But it's been absolutely fascinating to chat to you, John. Thank you so much. Just as a sort of final thing, you've spoken about some brilliant stuff today, the whole BOSCO thing, what you're doing as part of Modo25 and the other things you were talking about, the other endeavors that you're doing, and even the stuff in Uganda is fantastic as well. What's the best way for our listeners to sort of engage with you, get hold of you, and talk to you about this stuff some more?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, John Readman, Readman. Feel free to connect on there, or on Modo25. All my contact details are on there, and that you can talk to me on air about anything, whether it be cycling on for the charities, or whether it be Uganda and the orphanages, or the supper club. And that's probably the easiest is the Modo25.com.
Well, that sounds great, and I think I'm going to check out those things because it sounds so interesting. There's so much going on in your world, and I'd love to get you back on to talk about.
I'd love to come back on, and happily. I found it really good.
Yeah, thanks, John. So it just remains for me to say, I hope you enjoyed today, and if you are interested in hearing the other podcasts that we've done, any future ones that are coming out, and John's one obviously as well, please to go over to segmentify.com/podcast. And if you've got any questions about any particular topics you want us to cover, or you're interested in being on the show, do give me a shout anytime at phil@segmentify.com. Thanks so much again, John, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Put us to the test and let us prove we can drive more revenue for you. Sign up for a completely free proof of concept or split test against your current provider, set up and optimized by our team within a few days at segmentify.com/demo.